God gave it to you, but it doesn't belong to you. Your time, your talent, your treasure, it isn't actually yours. Today we're unpacking what it means to actually surrender that.
Hey, City Heart family. Welcome to After the Message. This is the show that we unpack everything Pastor Kevin told us on Sunday, because there's always a lot to unpack, and we talk about how it applies to our everyday lives. I'm Mandy.
Yeah, I'm Pastor Joe.
And we're excited that you joined us for another episode of After the Message. So let's get into it, because there is a lot to cover.
There is. He wants us to cover all this in 30 minutes.
All of it.
No problem.
Yep. So
get on.
So this week we kicked off the summer. We're calling it the summer remix, and the first sermon series from this is the first sermon title is Build the Dream. And so he kind of named 4 things that we're all supposed to steward. Okay, so we have our testimony, our time, our talent, and our treasure. And so my first question, I'm coming in with a wrecking ball. I'm coming in with a hard one.
Well, come on with it. Might as well.
So out of those 4 things, which one is the Lord leading you to just kind of open your hand up a little bit more with? So you talked about, like, yes, we're prying things out of our hands.
Oh, man. Multiple things, I think, for me. First and foremost, I think my testimony is a harder one for me.
Yeah.
And that's just strictly because sometimes I feel like my story's not as good as others. Does that make sense?
Oh, interesting.
Like, It's like, oh, I wasn't on drugs and I didn't come off the street and I didn't do all the things. I was just, I was a kid, grew up in church. And so for me, I was very hesitant about sharing, kind of my real story.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is, like, now where God's got me, I'm constantly telling my story and telling just some of the, just even my work stories and, like, my, kind of how I grew up in kind of organizational structure and, like, help establish a lot of that. And so there's so much of that, even just my day-to-day work ethic and how I handled business. Mm-hmm. Like, that was strictly coming from what I was learning from the Lord at that time. Like, I was going under his directions, like learning how to manage my schedule and all the things.
Yeah.
And so now the season I'm in, I'm actually coaching businesses to do a lot of the same things. So it's so interesting. I think my testimony's been the hardest one for me to just release a little bit, because I grew up tithing. That was not a big deal. I always knew time was a requirement. Because it's always one of those. And of course, your talent is like, oh, well, I'm serving in church, I'm speaking, or I'm doing all the things. But my own testimony was the one that was like, it's hard for me
that's so interesting.
Get rid of.
That's so okay, because it's so amazing how the Lord, like, everybody's things work together differently. Because my testimony is probably the easiest one. I'll tell you all my business. I'll tell you.
I don't know how you do it.
I will, like, lay it out there. And there was a time I was like, maybe I need to not tell people so much. Like, let me bring it back in a little bit. But that's so interesting of, like, how even with that, how Satan tells different lies to different people to keep your, like, so, because for me, it would have been more like the money, like the treasure of, like, that would have been the harder thing for me. Yeah. So the different lies that Satan tells us to keep us stuck in an area or to keep us from fully surrendering what the Lord has called us.
Absolutely.
And so he's prowling like a lion, and we have to be aware.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's important that we all know that, right? We all have areas, and I think that's why this is so important. You and I just having conversations, Pastor Kevin and I, just it's helping us see our blind spots and helping us see kind of like, hey, no, like, I know this feels uncomfortable, but this is needed for your growth. And it's like, and it's just one of those things. I've found the value in just having my family around me and, like, us being on the same plan together, even though it looks different and, like, it might feel a little different, but, like, yet when I talk to so many at church, it's like we are all still very unified in the spirit, like, on where we're going, and we're all doing different things, but it's still, like, the same landing pad, so to speak.
Yeah, that's really cool.
I love that.
So one of the things in this message Pastor Kevin talked about was really, so at the beginning of the year, we had this we talked about kingdom builders, and that the whole point of kingdom builders is to make a big impact and to impact our city, our world, our nation, and future generations. And so with that, in case you missed it, our goal for this year is $100,000, to raise $100,000 to make that impact. And that's outside of tithing.
Right.
But so I say all that to kind of give a setup, and in case you didn't watch the message, to know what I'm talking about. And so all of that, he laid out this picture and talked about the impact, and then he was saying you have to prepare for impact, and that you have to be intentional, and so that you have to be intentional to make a plan. And I was like, well, how perfect that Pastor Joe is on here, because you're one of the most intentional people that I know. And so with that kind of in mind, okay, so if you're preparing for impact and you're being intentional in making that impact, what are some ways that you've been intentional with time, talent, treasure, making a plan for the impact you know the Lord's calling you to?
Sure. And honestly, you know, I think I have a severe case of FOMO, of fear of missing out a little bit, which is why I'm such a planner, just so you know. So you go to Disney World, right? It's like, oh, I want to ride every ride. Well, if you've ever been to Disney World and you don't make a plan, you're just going to be stuck in one line for half the day, right?
Yeah.
And then you're going to be tired and cranky trying to figure out the rest of it. So thank God that I go with people sometimes that knows the fast pass and all the things. So they're meticulous as far as that goes. And so so I think that's where it starts, is like, oh, I just don't want to miss out a little bit, you know? And but what it boils down to for me, I think, is you kind of have these baseline things that are needed in everything we do. And so what does that look like? Right? And so for me, it's a trust in the Lord. It's a matter of putting that time first and foremost. And so I just, practically speaking, I use my calendar for a lot of things. And so, like, if I think it's important, it's on there. So my workout time is on there. So Monday through Friday from 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock, it's blocked out. Now, can I change it? Sure, but I'm probably not going to. It's there. My time with my kids. So I spend 30 minutes with each kid every week, at least just 30 minutes doing something they want to do, because I want them to know, like, hey, what you do is important to me. So when they grow up, I'm gonna be like, you know what, my dad was there for me. You know, obviously, block out some time for my wife as well. We have a date day or a date lunch every week on Fridays. So that's just one of those things. Like, so I realize, I'm like, for me and my sake, like, if it's important, I should be able to show it's important some tangible way. And so there's so many people. It's funny, like, oh, yeah, no, my kids are super important. I'm like, well, when's the last time you spent? Well, you know, I took them to a baseball game, and I took them to this, and, you know, they're usually their own games. So the kids are on the field.
Right.
But I was with them. They could see me from the stands. I'm like, yeah, but it really wasn't spending time with your kids. You know, it's like, when's the last time you just did something that they wanted to do, like Roblox or, you know, whatever it is? Like, you got in and did it with them. Well, I just don't do all that stuff. I'm like, well, then you got to be careful. So anyway, so I think to answer your question, practically speaking, for me, what I ask myself is, what is important for me this week, and is it scheduled for me? Like, so I'm a very scheduled kind of driven guy, and so that's how I do it. So if you ever look at my calendar, you're gonna be like, oh, okay. I always like to be able to say, if somebody looks at my calendar, they see what's important. Just like if somebody looks at my spending, they see, oh, well, this is what's important to Joe. You know, those type of things.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, but what about you? How do you do it? Because it's easier for me to plan, because I've been planning for a long time.
Yeah.
So what does that look like for you now?
So, if in case you don't know, Joe and I, we're different but the same. We're similar in a lot of ways, but I think our core of what we operate out of, like, some motivation, is different. So I do calendar block. I do put things on my schedule, and but I'm really bad about, oh yeah, I did say I wanted to do that, but right now in this moment, how I feel, I want to do something different, or like, this feels like it's on fire. This feels more important. And so I think for me, knowing, it's a lot of self-evaluation of, like, just because I feel a certain way doesn't mean that is the way God's leading me to. Like, so a phrase I say to myself a lot, and probably the friends, like, especially, you know, females are a little emotional, in case you didn't know this, Pastor Joe.
No idea. My wife is never emotional.
And so something that I've had to say to my friends, to me, is like, our feelings are not facts. Right. So just because I feel like, oh, I don't feel like working out, or I don't feel like spending time with my kids or my husband or finishing this task, it doesn't mean that like that's actually true. The Lord's called me to do these things. And so I think sometimes like that self-coaching and like self-discipline, but the other way that if that isn't working is accountability for me. I have to have a little bit, I don't know if this is healthy. I can go to therapy, but I have to have a little bit of fear of like shame of failure. Like I have to have a little bit of like, okay, I told Joe I was going to do this, or I told my husband I was going to do this, and they're going to be holding me accountable. And if I don't do this, I'm going to like, oh, I failed, or, oh, I didn't do it, or, oh, like I need some accountability. And so I think the calendar, and even maybe maybe for me, it's sharing my calendar with somebody and saying, these are the things I've said is important, help hold me accountable and like check in. So I think, so really what we're saying is having a setting, like what our schedule is, setting our priorities based on, set the priorities. Absolutely. And then find some accountability to help you with it.
Absolutely.
So I think between the two of us, maybe some goals
we're going to keep stacking.
Yeah,
this is going to be great. This is going to be great.
Yes.
Well, because, and I'll be honest, I had to start with that too, right? Is having an accountability partner, somebody showing up at the gym, and I had to call them and be like, hey, I'm not making it today or whatever. And it was like, well, what's wrong with you? And so that started that way. But I will say this, as the more and more that, and honestly, this is a conversation with God. It's creating the calendar. It's like, Lord, is this in the right place? It was about 2 months ago that I asked the Lord, I was like, am I putting too much into the gym? Because I don't want to, because we know physical exercise benefits little, right? In the grand scheme of things, right? Yeah. But it's one of those things that he's like, he reminded me, he's like, no, that is ministry. I need you to be in there for ministry. So one thing that we do in the gym every morning at 6 o'clock and 6:40, we have a devotional that we do every morning. And so there would be somebody shares and different things. And so like I get the opportunity to be able to help lead that and get people scheduled. So, I think it's important, number one, just to always go through the filter of the Holy Spirit. So, because that's also the reverse of that is you get so tight with your plan that you don't make room for the Holy Spirit to actually lead. And so it's great to make a plan. It's, and I love what he was talking about, preparation is really proof of our belief. I love that when he said that, because it's like, oh, okay. It's like, so me being able to make a plan says, you know what? No, I believe in what God has given us and what he's told us to do. And so if I believe that enough, I'm going to make sure it works. And so, so I think really what it boils down to for me in a lot of ways is it's like, okay, Lord, this is my plan, but I still need you to like work out the kinks in this. And so the beauty is, though, I don't necessarily need an accountability partner as much as I used to, but I'm still like, what I'm finding though is now I'm accountable to God, which is even bigger, because for you, I'm like, well, you missed last week. No big deal. All right, well, I'm going to miss this week. But God has never missed. Yeah. He's never let me down. His plan is still working. And I try to look back and find holes in it. And it doesn't look like how I wanted it to. And a lot of times the outcomes wasn't like I wanted it to be. But, man, the way we've grown through it, it's like, oh, okay. Well, God, I guess you were right in the first place. So, anyway, it's just.
Yeah. So even like taking what you're saying, like that preparation time, you have to grow. The whole point of preparation is for growth. So growing, even in the example of you having to have somebody else or me having somebody else hold me accountable to now maybe I don't need that because I'm just so close to God. He's my main accountability. Or even being accountable for like somebody else being accountable to you as you've grown. So like there's this preparation time to get you to the next step or the next level or making that impact that we're talking about. And so Pastor Kevin gave the example of like, basketball teams that, sports teams. And let me throw in there arts. Okay. I was thinking, I don't have any sports experience. That might shock you. But so for me, it would have been like you're in choir or you're doing voice lessons or piano lessons for a whole semester, a whole year. And then you have one recital, you have one performance, or like for actors, you weeks upon weeks, and then you have a week of performance, so in everything in life, you're doing all these things to prepare, and the preparation takes 10 times as long as the actual impact or moment or performance or game. And so I guess my question is, for the people that are in those seasons of preparation,
Sure.
how do you stay faithful in when you're, we get restless a lot. And like even
Yeah.
Pastor Cameron talked about this last week of like, you have these circumstances and you're in a season of waiting or preparation. And you're like, I'm ready to be there. Like, how do we stay faithful in where God has us?
Well, I mean, I think first and foremost, I have to keep the end in mind a little bit, right? So for those of you who didn't know, I also shoot fireworks, so I'm a pyrotechnician as well. So thankful to the city of Clinton and Ridgeland and Hattiesburg and Petal for allowing me to lead those shows. But that's kind of, I literally get on the job site about 5:45 in the morning, and the show's not till 9 o'clock at night.
Wow.
So it's one of those things where, and the show itself is only 15 minutes. So literally this is the epitome of what we're talking about here in just a really short, kind of compact type way. And so, at the end of the day, I always know 9 o'clock is coming, and I'm an engineer by trade. So one of the things I tell my guys, I'm like, hey, look, you only get one try to get it right the first time. And so, that's just, it's one of those things like, it's like everybody's there, we're excited about the show. It's like, all right, here we go. And then the first cue doesn't go off because you did something or didn't do something usually. And so I think it's so important just to keep the end in mind. Like, why are we here? And so, and there's so many times I have to remind myself, I'm like, God didn't put me on this earth to be a successful just Joe Reynolds. He put me on this earth because I am a display of his glory on this earth too, right? I am made in his image.
Yeah.
And I am a creation for him, so he is glorified. And I think once I get to that point, it really helps me to kind of put a lot of my selfishness out of the way. And like, okay, this is the big picture. This is why, Joe Reynolds is on this earth. This is why I'm here to encourage the Belhaven basketball team. This is why I'm here to call coach and be like, hey, man, I was just thinking about you. Love you. But if I was so caught up in the wrong thing, then it would be all about like how I'm feeling and what do I got, and I'm just worn out. And if anybody else knew, they just know I'm exhausted, so they'll give me a pass. It's like, but no, my calling is so much bigger than that. So I think that's huge. He brought up the movie Armageddon. So
yeah,
I love that movie too. Just so you know, I was like, okay, finally something Pastor Kevin and I can agree on. We're not going to agree on the Patriots, or we're not going to agree on stuff like that, but we'll agree on that movie. But, it's not like, it's like, oh, well, that didn't work. Let's send up another team, right? I mean,
there was one chance.
Yeah, there's so many times that happens in a church, though, right? It's like, oh, well, I don't feel like it. Just send another team. It's like, no, God has been preparing you for decades. God's been preparing you since, like, you were learning how to, like, handle your siblings when you were growing up. You know what I'm saying? Like, no, like, God has been preparing you for decades for this moment, and you're wanting to send another team? It's like, so anyway, so I think we got to keep the end in mind. That's just my personal.
Yeah. So there's a lot of, like, the perspective shift even of, like, the idea that if you said of like, oh, I'm tired, I'm like all the things we list off of like the reasons why we can't do it. So I think about this example of like, if you're looking down at yourself, you can't see the surroundings. Like if I'm literally looking, I'm only looking at me. I don't see everything that's happening around me. But then if I'm looking up at God, I can have my focus on God, and I can see all the things around me, the people that need help, the opportunities to share the gospel. And so I think there's like a literal posture shift that has to happen in order to keep that end in mind of, okay, Lord, this is where we're going. This is the impact you've called me to make. And this is really the goal that you've called us to like press on to the goal, like Paul talks about.
I just love, like, I love what you said, looking up to God, right? And what we're so, I hate to say this, like we watch so many movies and we're seeing the main character all the time, right? And so some of us have an issue of putting ourselves in the main character role all the time.
Yeah.
And it's like, you're not always the main character. I think when I realized that, I'm like, oh man, I am a great supporting role for a lot of people. And it really took a lot of the pressure off of me. Because it's like this world's success and failure is not laying on Joe Reynolds. It's like, but I am really good at encouraging Mandy. I'm really good at encouraging Pastor Kevin. I'm really good at like, pointing out those things that like, I'm like, man, I see a God at work in your life. And it's like, okay, that's my call now. So I get to be a piece of that puzzle. I think is so key. And so one of the things I think that the church falls into, the church world, people go to church, all the things, right, is we wait for the church to come up with the plan, and then we think, well, it doesn't match my plan. It doesn't match what I think. Okay, well, it might not, right? But in the grand scheme, it will. But the day-to-day, it might not. You're like, well, I need to go help the homeless. Okay, well, go ahead. Because I love what, because my job is, the job is making the plans bigger than the pastor. It's bigger than the church. Like, I have a role. I think that was the biggest thing that I was getting out of this was Pastor Kevin, like, really just like, hey, we're equipping people to fulfill their role in the big plan of the church.
Yeah.
And so, like, when people tell me that, I'm like, that may be for you. Like, I don't know if I need all 200 people of the church to get up and go out and feed this one guy. But you can.
Right.
And I don't know if I need the entire men's group or entire women's group or whatever to get up and go serve in this. But you can. And so, like, those are the type of things I'm like, I truly try to remind people, like, hey, so much of this big plan, it does lie in your hands too. It just, maybe they just didn't notice, or they're waiting on somebody to affirm them or like send them off. It's like, God already sent you off.
Yeah.
Go do that,
Yeah, we all have a part to play, and it's not, because I remember that part. I remember going and making a note because I was like, ooh, that was good, Pastor Kevin.
Yeah. Got him.
of that, we are easy to come in, enjoy worship, enjoy coffee, enjoy a good message, and then go out again and think that's our part, or like that's it.
Right.
When there's so much more to the Christian life, and there's so many more needs to be met, and if God's placed the specific time, talent, treasure, testimony in your hand to encourage that person, to share the gospel with that person, to financially make it possible to send a missionary, financially make it possible to make church happen on a Sunday morning, And so I think about that we all have, like you said, all have a part to play, and to stop waiting for permission, or stop waiting for a person to say, like, you're waiting for Pastor Joe to come say, okay, just you, I want you. Like, we want people's recognition, when really it's God who's already given us everything we need.
Absolutely.
And so, okay, so we're about to wrap up, but before we wrap up, I do want to make sure that we recognize Red Squared for making this podcast happen. We're recording right here at the Hangar. Beautiful recording studio, and they've been such an incredible partner in helping us create the content that reaches people in our city and beyond, just like what we're talking about this morning. And Red Squared, if you're not familiar, is a full service production company, and they also handle communications. They're really focused and really do a great job with storytelling and helping organizations communicate with clarity and with excellence. So we're really grateful for their support. And if you have any production or communication needs, you can find them online at redsquare.co. So as we wrap this up, our spiritual challenge, we always want to, send people out with an action item and how they can apply this. And so kind of putting some ribbon and bows around this conversation of, Pastor Kevin started out talking about this Kingdom Builders Challenge, and I hate to even say challenge, because we're all kingdom builders. That's what God's called us to be. Kingdom. It's not just, a Kingdom Builders campaign or communication plan. It's we are rising up to be kingdom builders, and we do that through our time, talent, treasure, and testimony. And so if we're making a plan and building the dream, which is what we were talking about this week, what does that look like in everyday life?
Oh, man. So I'm a coach as well. So I coached rugby for a long time. But I think a lot of things is depth charts. So sometimes I just not try to put myself on a depth chart.
I don't know what that is.
It's all the positions on the
I
field.
have no sports experience.
Yeah. so you get all the positions on the field,
okay.
Right? So for rugby, it's left wing, it's right wing. It's
okay.
You get it. And so I just literally put myself in that position. So I'm literally like, okay, Joe, so there might be a church depth chart, a kingdom depth chart, so to speak. And so that's one thing I'm like, man, if like, Lord, show me where I'm supposed to be there. And so I love, like, because you're on like episode 7, I think, of your podcast, like Mondays with Mandy.
Yes, yeah.
Which I'm a little offended because you keep talking to all the women, and I'm like, I'm watching this, Mandy. So just so you know,
I'll say ladies and Pastor Joe.
And Pastor Joe, you can say and Pastor Joe, and but that's where I'm like, oh, okay, man, she's found her position. I think that's
Mm.
so cool. And so anyway, so yeah, I think practically speaking, it's like, man, okay, well, think about it. If, at the end of the day, you could be in a position, what would it be?
Mm.
And then put yourself there. And then you can start thinking, well, this is what it takes to get there. So that, and then on top of that as well is just is put things on a calendar, put things on a, like, no, this is my non-negotiables. That's so much of what's wrong. I'll just be honest with you. It's like what you talked about before. Oh, it's important, but it's not really.
Yeah.
It's like, no, there needs to be some things on my calendar that do not move, right? Me kissing my wife before I leave. That's not on my calendar per se, but on my mental calendar and on my mental clock, I
Yeah.
don't leave the house without kissing my wife.
Mhm.
That is a trigger, and it triggers so many other things around me. So I think it's important to have and know what those triggers are. So I think my walk away is pick one trigger. So I have multiple triggers in my day. 3:56 in the morning, my phone goes off. I read Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 and 6, every day. Even if I go back to bed, I can still get up, read that, and then go right back to bed. And then I have multiple triggers. Kissing my wife is a trigger, right? That reminds me to do so many other things. Even pray for her as I walk out the door because I'm already triggered to do that. So I think that's an easy walk away point is just pick one trigger for this week.
Yeah, no, that's really good. And I want to add one thing to what you were just saying. You're talking about what was the depth chart? Is
The
that what you're
depth
saying?
chart, yeah.
So as you were talking about it, the Holy Spirit just kind of said, well, what if somebody feels like if they're looking at the picture and they feel like they don't have a part to play, like they feel they're not good enough, they don't have value or worth, or like they're struggling with their identity of
Sure.
what they have to offer. And he just reminded me of look at what's already in your hands. Look at because God's placed everything that's in your hands. So if you're struggling of like, I don't know where I fit in, I don't know what I have to offer, look at what's already in your hands. And out of
Good.
those four
Really good.
things, God's given that in your hand, and your job is to take it and offer it back to him through through the church, through your time, all those things. So if you're struggling with that idea, look at what's in your hands and put that, actually, Pastor Kevin talked about this. Actually, I love photography. I'm just using that because, if anybody wants to come do some photography for the church.
There you go.
But, really looking, I love photography. This is an easy way of helping to
Absolutely.
put myself on the chart.
That's really good. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Your phone is probably in your hand. I think Mandy's hinting around that you could be using that. So,
Yeah, if you're going to be on your phone anyway, use it for the glory of God.
absolutely.
All right.
good.
Well, thank you for joining us, Pastor Joe, and thank
Thank you
you
for
for
having me.
everybody that's watching us. Our heart is that this conversation doesn't just stay here, but it carries into your week. So do that walk away point, your trigger. Think about what that could be. Look at what's in your hands and see how you can give that back to the glory of God. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you next week.